what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. I am currently recording on my phone because my GoPro doesn't want to work with me. I'm going to try to fix it so we can get back to the glorious GoPro quality that we all know and love. Yes, I know GoPros don't look that great, but I like filming with a GoPro, so I'm going to try to get it fixed, but for now I have to record with my phone. So let's get moving. Let's get into the video. I want to talk about How to Train Your Dragon. So with the third film coming up in just a couple weeks, I want to talk about some of my favorite stuff from the first two films, and maybe a little on the third film. So, the first thing I want to talk about is just the way the movies look. The first film looked okay. I never really, and I am still not a fan of the way the first film looks, although it still looks okay. I mean, it's not so far that I can't stand to watch it, but I just I'm not really a fan of the way the first film looks. Regardless, I still like the first film. The second film really stepped it up a notch, improving colors, detail, colors, detail, art style, visually it was just much nicer than the first film. And the third film is supposed to look even nicer than the second one. So my expectations are like expectations for Infinity War. Expectations for How to Train Your Dragon 3. Yeah, my expectations are really high for this film. I have been super hyped to see it since the trailer dropped. First trailer dropped like March of last year. I just got super hyped, and this film, in terms of visuals, I have high expectations. And if it's not what I expect or above, I'm going to be disappointed. So, yeah. Visually, in terms of how the film is supposed to look, expectations way up here. Moving on, the villains. I want to talk about the villains because the villains of How to Train Your Dragon have always interested me. The first film's villain, in the beginning it's presented that it's the Vikings versus all the dragons, and that the dragons are not nice creatures. But we slowly begin to learn that that's not what they are, and then we eventually learn that the problem isn't actually all the dragons. They have this one kind of nasty dude at the top telling them or commanding them, or potentially even threatening them based on how they react, to retrieve the Vikings' food and bring it and give it to him. And when they defeat the big bad, the big dude, big bully, he's kind of like a bully. I'm just going to refer to him as like the big bully, because I forget what that's, I feel like it has a name, but I don't know what its name is. Anyway, so they kind of defeat the big bully at the end, and then you see how Vikings realized they were wrong about dragons, and that the problem wasn't actually the dragons, but the big bully, and they kind of start living in peace at the end of the film. Then we move on to the second film, which, if you want to know anything about what happened between the first film and the second film, you can watch Riders of Berk, Defenders of Berk, and Race to the Edge, one of which, Race to the Edge, is on Netflix. I don't know where you can find the other two. Google Play, maybe, buy them on there. Don't know where else to find them, really. They fill in what happens from the first and the second film, and there's a lot to digest there. Anyway, moving on. The second film's villain is probably my favorite villain in the How to Train Your Dragon franchise. Not necessarily my favorite villain of all time, but he's definitely up there with one of my favorite villains of all time, or some of my favorite villains of all time. Anyway, moving on. Talking about the villain, getting sidetracked. Drago Bloodfist is a very interesting character to me, and not because of his motivations. I always hated the villains who are like, destroy the world, conquer the world, I'm bad, no redeeming qualities. That is like Drago Bloodfist. I don't like villains like that normally, but Drago Bloodfist interests me because throughout the whole film, not the whole film, but a majority of the film, there's this theme that Hiccup's not understanding, this concept Hiccup's not understanding. Not that while what he's doing is great, not everyone is going to agree with how he views humans and dragons living together. And Drago Bloodfist is one said individual. But Hiccup thinks he can change his mind. But before he chases off to do that, Stoic says this one-liner, "A chief protects his own." And it takes Hiccup... By the way, spoilers for the films. That one just hit me. I'm about to reveal a big plot point in the second film. Eventually, Hiccup's father dies at the hands of Toothless being controlled by an alpha. It's not Toothless's fault, obviously, as what he did under the control of the bad alpha cannot be put on Toothless. Toothless had no say in the matter, obviously. He was being mind-controlled. But the point is it takes Hiccup losing his father to the hands of this villain. And after they have a very beautiful funeral for Stoic, I might add, Hiccup repeats the one line, "A chief protects his own." A chief protects his own, sorry. And what we realize is it takes Hiccup, all of that, it takes him losing his father to understand not everyone is going to change their mind. Some people are going to disagree with this way of life, and they are going to do everything in their power to stop it. So, Drago Bloodfist was an interesting villain to me, not because of his motivations, but ultimately because he served a purpose to teach Hiccup a lesson. And while Hiccup had to learn it the hard way, he still learned the lesson, which still makes him a good villain. Now, How to Train Your Dragon 3. I've spent a lot of this time talking about the villains, but there was a lot to digest with Drago Bloodfist. Anyway, oh, and another thing about Drago Bloodfist. His design was really cool, too. I was a fan of it. Moving on. How to Train Your Dragon 3's villain. Grimmel? I don't know his last name, but his first name is like Grimmel. Anyway, there's not much to really talk about. He looks like a very, very... what's the word I'm looking for? Dang it! Sorry, I can't remember the word! Whatever. He seems like a very... Good? Good is the only word I can think of. Very good, or well... One of... Okay, here's a good way of describing it. He seems like one of the best dragon trappers in their world. Or at least that's how it seems to be presented from a clip we see with Hiccup. Dang it. The guy from the second film. I can't remember his name either. Aaron. Yes, Aaron. There's a scene that we've already seen that has already been released where Hiccup talks with Aaron from the second film, who was a dragon trapper, says that he's one of the... or... It doesn't say it, but it's clear that this guy is supposed to be one of the best dragon trappers in their world. Anyway, other than that, there's not much to really say about Grimmel. Other than I really like his character design. His fleet seems huge, and it seems like this is what's going to force Hiccup to split up with Toothless. The dragons are going to have to go underground, and I think what's going to happen is that I just watched another part of a trailer where Stoic talks about sealing up the hidden world, or the waterfall as they talk about it, but we know it's the hidden world. Talks about sealing up the hidden world to prevent dragons from fighting with Vikings. So what I think is going to happen is they're going to take the dragons to the hidden world. Hiccup's going to seal it up to save the dragons from this guy. That's what I think is going to ultimately happen. And we also know that this whole film is going to be about Hiccup standing on his own. Like, Hiccup... There's a line from Ash where she says that Hiccup thinks he's nothing without Toothless. And while that might have been the case in the first film before he met Toothless, Hiccup's become a very strong Viking since then. Hiccup is very much so someone without Toothless. Is the best way of putting it, in my opinion, from what I can think. So the whole film is going to be about Hiccup and Toothless learning that while they are great together, they are also... No. While they are amazing together, they are also very strong on their own. And it's going to be about... It seems like the film is going to be about learning that, and that this Grimmel villain is going to be a important catalyst for that. I think that's all I have to say on How to Train Your Dragon. I hope I covered enough stuff to keep this video interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for future content. And peace out. Yo, what is going on, guys?